There's a moment most people can point to. Maybe you're sitting in a meeting watching someone half as smart as you get handed the opportunity you've been waiting for, or you're reading about a 26-year-old who built something worth millions, using nothing but a laptop and a clear head, or you're lying awake at 3 in the morning replaying a decision you made years ago that you knew, somewhere deep down, was wrong the moment you made it. And the question that rises up isn't why did that happen? The question is quieter and more uncomfortable than that. The question is, why didn't I think better? That question is what this book is about. Not intelligence. Intelligence is largely fixed and largely over. Not motivation, not hustle, not passion. Thinking, the actual mechanics of how your mind processes information, constructs narratives, resists change, falls for patterns that aren't there, and systematically avoids the very insights that would set it free. Most people were never taught how to think. They were taught what to think, what opinions to hold, what facts to memorize, what answers to give. But the skill of thinking itself, the architecture of good judgment, the ability to step outside your own head and see your reasoning clearly, that was assumed, and that assumption has cost most of us more than we'll ever fully know. What you're about to hear isn't a collection of motivational phrases or abstract philosophy. These are 13 lessons, precise, practical, and in some cases almost embarrassingly simple, that cut directly to the habits and patterns that quietly determine the quality of every decision you make, every relationship you navigate, every risk you evaluate, every opportunity you recognize or miss. Some of these will make you nod in recognition. Others will make you uncomfortable. All of them will make you think differently by the time we're done. Let's begin. Lesson 1. The map is not the territory. The first lesson starts with something called the map and the territory. It's an old idea from a philosopher named Alfred Korzybski, but its applications are startlingly modern. The map is not the territory. The menu is not the meal. The word fire is not hot. What Korzybski understood, and what most people spend their entire lives ignoring, is that human beings are almost entirely responding to their mental models of reality, not to reality itself. We react to the map. We fight for the map. We make million-dollar decisions based on the map. And we almost never stop to ask how accurate the map actually is. Think about what this means in practical terms. A founder who built a company in 2015 has a mental model of how customers behave, what the market wants, how competitors will respond. That model was built from real experiences, real data, real feedback, real outcomes. It was accurate, or at least useful, at the time. But here's where thinking breaks down. We don't update our maps. We treat a model that was accurate 5 years ago as if it were a law of physics. The founder in 2024 is still running on the 2015 map, and every time reality doesn't match expectations, they explain it away instead of revising their understanding. This is not stupidity. It is a deeply human cognitive habit. The brain is a prediction machine. It is wired to find patterns, build models, and then use those models to predict what happens next. Pattern recognition is not a bug. It is the most fundamental feature of human intelligence. The problem is that the brain treats its own models as ground truth. When the territory stops matching the map, the easier move neurologically, psychologically, is to dismiss the territory as an anomaly rather than revise the map. Here's the actionable core of this lesson. You need to build a deliberate practice of map checking. When a situation confuses you, when an outcome surprises you, when someone's behavior doesn't make sense before you explain it away, ask yourself, what does this tell me about the accuracy of my current model? In the AI economy, in freelancing, in modern business, the people winning are not the smartest. They are the fastest at updating their maps. They treat surprise not as noise but as signal. A consultant who gets a client result she didn't expect doesn't just move on. She stops. She asks, what does this result tell me about my assumptions? She treats it like a message from the territory itself. And over time, her map gets more accurate. That's compounding intelligence. Lesson 2. Confirmation bias goes deeper than you think. Confirmation bias isn't just the tendency to seek out information that agrees with you. That's the surface layer. The deeper, more damaging version is, this confirmation bias determines what you notice in the first place. It operates before conscious thought. Your brain is processing far more sensory input than your conscious awareness can handle. So it filters. It selects. And the filter is heavily weighted toward information that confirms what you already believe. This means that if you believe your business model is sound, you are literally, neurologically, less likely to notice the customer feedback that contradicts it. You are not choosing to ignore it. You are not seeing it. There's a study that captures this beautifully. Researchers showed 2 groups of people, one group who believed in capital punishment, one group who opposed it, the same set of research studies on whether the death penalty deters crime. Both groups rated the studies that supported their view as more rigorous and more convincing. Both groups rated the opposing studies as methodologically flawed. They weren't lying. They genuinely perceived it that way. The same data, through different filters, produce opposite conclusions, and both groups left the experiment more confident in their original position than when they started. Now apply that to a conversation you had last week, the performance review you gave, the pitch you evaluated, the relationship conflict you're still processing. In every case, the version of events you carry is not objective. It is curated. It is a highlight reel produced by a system that has already decided what matters. And the most dangerous thing about this isn't that you might be wrong about a specific fact. It's that it makes learning almost impossible. Because learning requires updating your beliefs in response to new information, and confirmation bias filters out the new information most threatening to your existing beliefs. The antidote is not to try harder to be objective. Trying harder while using the same cognitive process doesn't help. The antidote is structured. You need to build what Charlie Munger calls a kill the idea process. Before you commit to any significant belief, decision, or plan, you explicitly assign yourself the job of trying to destroy it. You ask, what would have to be true for this to be completely wrong? You seek out the smartest, most credible people who disagree with you, and you try to understand their reasoning from the inside, not to defeat it, but to actually absorb it. If you cannot steelman the opposing view, if you cannot state it in a way that its proponents would recognize as fair, you don't actually understand the issue well enough to have a confident opinion about it. Lesson 3. First order versus second order. Thinking. First order thinking is fast, intuitive, and usually wrong in complex situations. It asks, what will happen if I do this? Second order thinking asks, and then what? And then what after that? First order thinking is why governments implement policies with obvious short-term benefits and catastrophic long-term consequences. It is why people accept jobs for the salary without asking what kind of person they'll become after 10 years in that environment. It is why the most popular investment choices are the ones that have recently performed best, ignoring that performance tends to revert to the mean. Here is a clean modern example. A freelancer decides to lower their prices to attract more clients. First order thinking, more clients. Second order thinking, what happens to the quality of clients I attract at lower prices? What does charging less signal about the value I provide? How does my time fill up with lower margin work, reducing my availability for higher value opportunities? How does the pattern of constant discounting affect my own confidence in my pricing over time? First order thinking sees the tactic. Second order thinking sees the system. The same dynamic plays out in the AI economy right now in ways that are shaping entire career trajectories. First order thinking about AI. It can do my job, so I should be afraid. Second order thinking, what skills become more valuable as AI handles the routine? What does AI enable that wasn't possible before? Where's the new bottleneck forming in systems that use AI, and how can I position myself there? The people thinking in second and third order right now are not panicking. They are finding leverage. They are building at the exact point where the wave is about to break. The practice for developing second order thinking is simple but requires discipline. For any important decision, write down the expected first order outcome. Then write down at least 3 second order effects, things that will happen as a consequence of the first thing happening. Then write down what happens next. You need to get this perfectly right. The value isn't in predicting the future accurately. The value is in expanding your time horizon and training yourself to see chains of causation rather than isolated events. Over time, your intuition catches up. You start naturally thinking in systems. Lesson 4. The sunk cost trap and the clean slate test. The reason sunk cost thinking is so powerful isn't that people are irrational. It's that admitting a sunk cost feels like admitting failure. When you've spent 3 years building a company in a direction that isn't working, pivoting isn't just a strategic choice, it feels like a confession. It feels like saying, I was wrong, I wasted time, I misjudged. And the psychological cost of that confession, in many people, is high enough that they will keep spending, keep investing time, money, energy, and identity into a direction that has already shown them clearly that it isn't working. There's a concept that cuts right through this, and it's called the Clean Slate Test. Here's how it works. You are not allowed to consider anything you've already invested. You cannot factor in money spent, time committed, or emotional energy deployed. You are only allowed to look forward, from this exact moment, with full knowledge of where you are and what you know. Would you choose to start this project, relationship, career path, or investment from scratch? If the honest answer is no, if you would not choose to begin this today knowing what you know, then you are being held in place by the past, not pulled forward by the future. This is especially critical in the modern economy, where the pace of change means that strategies which were correct 18 months ago can be genuinely wrong today. The founder who spent 2 years building a product in a space that AI just made obsolete is not in a worse position for having built it. The knowledge and skills she gained are real assets, but she needs to apply the clean slate test to the original direction. The sunk cost fallacy will whisper that she can't let it go, that 2 years is too much to walk away from. Second order thinking and the clean slate test together will tell her the truth. The 2 years are already spent either way. The only question is what she does with the next 2. Lesson 5. Your information diet is your thinking. Here's the mechanism. Your brain is a prediction engine running on pattern recognition, and the patterns it has available are the patterns you feed it. If your daily information intake consists primarily of outrage-driven news media, social comparison on social platforms, and conversations with people who share all your existing beliefs, you are feeding your pattern recognition system a dataset that will produce a very specific set of conclusions, and almost none of them will be useful. You will overestimate danger. You will underestimate gradual improvement. You will systematically misread probability. You will confuse what is loud for what is important. The research on this is striking. Studies of expert forecasters, people who are actually good at predicting future events, consistently show that the best predictors share a specific trait. They consume information from many different sources with different ideological frameworks. They actively read and engage with views they disagree with. They treat their own current beliefs as hypotheses to be tested rather than truths to be defended. This is what researcher Philip Tetlock calls being a fox rather than a hedgehog, knowing many things rather than one big thing, staying curious, and pluralistic rather than confident and categorical. Now translate this to your actual life. If you are a freelance designer and the only content you consume is from other designers, your sense of what clients value is being filtered through the lens of what designers value. To actually understand your clients, you need to consume the content your clients consume, the business press, the competitor analyzes, the investor reports, industry trends that keep them awake at night. If you're building a business, you need to read philosophy, biology, history, disciplines that have already solved versions of the problems you're encountering in completely different contexts. The practical step here is to audit your information environment once a month. Ask, what domains is this missing? What perspectives am I not encountering? What would I think if I spent the next month consuming content from people who fundamentally disagree with my current worldview? You don't have to adopt their conclusions, but exposure to serious, well-argued alternative perspectives will make your thinking more robust, more nuanced, and more predictive. A mind that has been tested against strong opposition is a stronger mind. Lesson 6. Knowing versus believing theirs. A deceptively simple skill that separates consistently good thinkers from everyone else. The ability to accurately distinguish between what you know and what you believe. These feel like the same thing from the inside. They are profoundly different. What you know is grounded in evidence that has been tested, repeated, and verified in ways that reduce the chance of error. What you believe is a conclusion your brain has reached based on the best available information filtered through your prior experiences, emotional states, social identity, and cognitive biases. Charlie Munger has a practice worth adopting directly. He will not express an opinion on a subject until he can state the opposing view in terms that the opposing side would consider fair and accurate. He refuses to hold strong beliefs about complex matters he hasn't studied. He keeps what he calls a hard pile problems and questions that he doesn't understand well enough to have useful opinions about. Most people have no too hard pile. They have opinions about everything. They mistake fluency, the ability to talk about something, for understanding, and they make decisions at enormous cost based on confident beliefs that were never subjected to the kind of scrutiny that would have revealed their fragility. In practice, this means developing the habit of calibration. When you assert something, ask yourself, what's my confidence level? And what would change that level? And what would change that level? If something could only increase your confidence and nothing could decrease it, that is a sign you're holding a belief as identity, not as hypothesis. Real knowledge is falsifiable. Real understanding comes with an honest acknowledgement of its limits. The person who says, I'm 70% confident in this is the right direction, and here's what would move me toward 90%, and here's what would move me toward 50, is thinking better than the person who says, I know this is right. And over time, calibrated thinkers make far fewer catastrophic mistakes. Lesson 7. Asymmetric decision-making's brain craves certainty. Evolution built in a strong preference for clear answers over ambiguous ones, because in environments where a slow decision could mean death, hesitation was dangerous. But modern decision-making environments are not ancient savannas. They are complex, information-rich, nonlinear systems where overconfident, quick decisions are often more dangerous than a little productive uncertainty. And the habits of evolution gave us for processing uncertainty, defaulting to what feels familiar, deferring to authority, avoiding the discomfort of not knowing, consistently lead us astray. The framework that works here is called asymmetric decision. You evaluate decisions not by their most likely outcome but by the asymmetry of their possible outcomes. Jeff Bezos called this two-way door thinking. Some decisions are two-way doors. You can make the decision, see how it goes, and walk back through if it doesn't work. These decisions should be made quickly and boldly. Spending enormous time and caution on a reversible decision is waste. It consumes resources you need for the decisions that actually require care. Other decisions are one-way doors. Once made, they cannot be unmade or can only be reversed at enormous cost. The mistake most people make and most organizations make is treating two-way doors as one-way doors. They apply the same level of caution and committee thinking to a reversible tactical experiment as to a strategic commitment. And in doing so, they slow themselves down without gaining any of the protection that careful thinking actually provides. Meanwhile, they occasionally treat one-way doors as two-way doors, moving fast on commitments that are genuinely hard to reverse. And those are the mistakes that are catastrophic. Here's the actionable application. Before you make any significant decision, ask one question before all others: is this reversible? If yes, move faster than feels comfortable. Make the decision, learn, and adjust. If no, if this decision commits resources, relationships, reputation, or direction in ways that are genuinely hard to undo, slow down, get more information, get outside perspectives, run the clean slate test, think in second order. The asymmetry of reversibility is one of the most powerful tools for allocating your cognitive resources wisely. Asterisk a closing reflection. The invisible cost before we close. Let me weave together what we've uncovered because these aren't separate ideas. They form a system. The map and the territory are connected to confirmation bias. We build maps, and then bias keeps us from updating them. Second-order thinking is connected to information environment. You can only think in second order about systems you understand, and your understanding is shaped entirely by your information diet. The sunk cost fallacy is connected to the distinction between knowledge and belief. Sunk cost thinking is what happens when we confuse our emotional investment for factual evidence about the future. And asymmetric decision-making is the practical, the container that holds all of it, the process that lets you act well despite uncertainty, without either paralysis or recklessness. The reason these lessons feel like things you should have learned years ago is precisely because they are foundational. They don't sit on top of success the way tactics do. They sit underneath it. Every great decision you've watched someone else make, every outcome that seemed to prove some people just have better judgment in almost every case, those outcomes were produced by habits of thinking that are learnable, practicable, and improbable with exactly the kind of intentional effort you're already making by being here. But here's what I want to leave you with, and it's not a comfortable thought. The most dangerous version of ignoring these lessons isn't the dramatic failure. It's not the single catastrophic decision. It is the slow, invisible accumulation of slightly suboptimal thinking compounded across thousands of decisions over years and decades. It is the business that never quite scales because the founder's map was never quite accurate enough. It is the career that plateaus because the professional stopped updating their information environment at 42. It is the investor who never compounds at her actual potential because she couldn't distinguish her knowledge from her beliefs. The most expensive mistakes in life are not the ones you can point to. They are the alternatives you never recognized. The paths you didn't notice because your map didn't include them. The opportunities your confirmation bias filtered out before they ever reached your conscious attention. The decisions you labored over 4 months that should have taken days, and the commitments you made in hours that deserved months. These costs are invisible, which is why most people never add them up. But they are real, and they compound, just like their inverse. The inverse is a mind that updates, a mind that checks its maps against new territory, a mind that seeks out disagreement as a form of sharpening, a mind that holds its beliefs lightly enough to let evidence improve them and tightly enough to actually act on them, a mind that thinks in systems and time, not just in immediate events. This kind of mind is not rare because it requires exceptional talent. It is underrepresented because it requires practice, discomfort, and a willingness to be wrong in service of eventually being right. You have started that practice. What you do with it from here is, in the most literal sense, a matter of how you think.